Hey there, it's Elahe. It's Wednesday, June 19th, and we're off today for Juneteenth. But today we get to hear from sports columnist Jerry Brewer. Jerry lays out why he believes the unifying power of sports has been ruptured through grievance politics, and how many of those grievances are racially charged. It's the first column in a series Jerry wrote called The Grievance Games, about the political and cultural forces that are fracturing American sports. Okay, here's Jerry.
Huntsville, Alabama. At this sports crime scene, a great myth suffered a random death. The games we love lost their unifying superpower here. It ruptured in a soundbite. Some consider Donald Trump the culprit, but he was just a closer. Tension was already there, primed for manipulation. 7 years ago, during a political rally at the Von Braun Center, Trump used his presidential privilege to finish the job. With one vulgar and meandering diatribe against protesting NFL players, he made American sports civility collapse. It seems no one cares to rebuild it. The president shouted,
"Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!" Wouldn't you love it?
His taunt became the soundtrack for sports discord. It spawned a counter-movement that politicizes the arena in ways more blatant than athletes railing against inhumanity. On September 22, 2017, an early autumn Friday night, Trump invited right-wing grievance to the fight, an intractable adversary that continues to haunt the environment long after his presidency. When we gather for sports now, some Americans root against the United States in international competition for reasons ranging from too much bravado to too many vocal equality seekers. In 2018, people started burning their Nike attire after the company released a promotion featuring former quarterback Colin Kaepernick.
So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
Whose kneeling protest shook the nation and cost him his career. Quarterback Aaron Rodgers persists, reputation be damned, with misinformation campaigns. The slogan, "Save Women's Sports," invigorates an aggressive, nationwide political effort to banish transgender people from sports. The grievances are everywhere, spreading insidiously, challenging our core beliefs about social interaction and fair play. I used to have no doubt about the unifying superpower of sports, how they turn strangers into teammates and teammates into family, how they make community out of motley spectators, how they raise the curtains for societal progress. I used to believe it was an imperishable kind of magic. I don't anymore. Or rather, I can't. Division has seized too much control. It is the embrace of these divides, rather than the newness of them, that spoils our ability to unite around anything, even the fun stuff. There's almost nothing fresh about the issues barricading us, except for the commitment to be angry and inhuman, vindictive and regressive, insincere and obtuse, to feel threatened and become a threat in response. The sports world did not create these attitudes, neither did Trump for that matter. Yet for as much as we celebrate the positive, transcendent impact of these games, We either chose or allowed the landscape to be flooded with insecurity, resentment, and petty behavior. Some relish the grievance. Others chase it for clout. The worst find perverse joy within the conflict. Before Super Bowl 58, the romance between music icon Taylor Swift and Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce fueled a wild conspiracy theory. Swift, the Chiefs, and the NFL were in cahoots to rig the title game and help President Biden win re-election,
leading many to speculate, without evidence, that the Super Bowl outcome is, quote, rigged to give Swift a bigger platform to endorse Biden again.
So is Swift a front for a covert political agenda?
The belief was strong enough that NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell addressed media questions before the game.
I don't think I'm that good a scripter.
He joked. When humor did not suffice, he scoffed.
It's nonsense.
This is what our sports world has become. So full of lunacy and suspicion, so devoid of galvanizing spirit. I came to Huntsville to chase a ghost, returning to the site of the explosion and conjuring those raw feelings once more. It was late February, just after President's Day, and the Rocket City could not decide whether it wanted to drizzle, gust wind, or defer to sunshine. The multiple personalities of an expiring Alabama winter seemed appropriate for the dissonant new sports era. Samantha Nielsen, the Von Braun Center Marketing and Public Relations Director, guided a tour of the city's downtown centerpiece. With a soft Alabama drawl, she stitched a blissful image of all the fame and fellowship the complex has experienced, all the culture and enrichment it has provided for her hometown. This is a melting pot, Nielsen insisted. Different people, different cultures, different backgrounds, they come here, they fall in love with it, because it's a melting pot. That description, melting pot, is a mossy old American concept now, but the innocence in her voice made it sound aspirational again. Framed photos on the walls memorialize signature events, as well as music icons who brought thousands together. Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley, Dolly Parton, Lionel Richie, Reba McEntire, Prince, Elton John. There is no recognition of Trump, the iconoclast who made a thunderous noise 7 years ago. Nielsen walked me through the back entrance that Trump took, the lounge where he waited, the hallway that he strode through to take the stage. It opened an eerie emotional portal to the past. The roar of the crowd that night prefaced the madness. Trump shook his head and lifted his hands. Chants of USA, USA, USA filled the arena. In blood-red Alabama, the audience received his words like poetry.
I'm thrilled to be here with the really great person that I've gotten to know, Luther Strange.
Trump came to Huntsville to support Senator Luther Strange, who was trying to fend off Roy Moore in a GOP runoff.
Maybe most importantly, he shares our agenda. Remember, he's going to win the race.
Despite the endorsement, Strange would lose a few days later. Still, Trump accomplished something greater, or worse. He recalibrated the power of sports for his own agenda. He tapped into the central racial grievance that keeps athletics ensnared in American polarization. The resentment that the largest fan faction, most of them white and many of them conservative, holds towards black athletes who have the nerve to complain about injustice despite all their fame and fortune. Those fans see the athletes as ungrateful, disrespectful, race-baiting contrarians whose mothers must not have raised them right. When the athletes, many of whom rose through poverty, articulate a heart-wrenching desire to represent marginalized people who look like them and have no voice. Those fans scoff at their cries to be seen as full humans, to be accepted as worthy of respect when they're not entertaining. Fire them. They make too much damn money anyway. To understand that attitude is to understand how one off-script snippet of a speech can carry such significance. It was the opening through which all kinds of regressive conduct entered what many of us thought was a safe space to model the nation's potential. The tension has always been there, but the history of American athlete protest is filled with solitary acts, isolating the recoil. However, we have been on this path since 2012 when Trayvon Martin's death sparked a movement that stirred black athletes and led to an era of widespread protest. The controversy peaked when Kaepernick protested the entire 2016 season. The activism persevered even after he was forced off the stage. For all the public discomfort, there had been no true organized backlash, only scattered displeasure. Then Trump unleashed extreme patriotism on the activist cause. It was no longer a fight to make people understand the deadly consequences of racial injustice. It turned into an unambiguous, not to mention misleading, choice. Are you American or un-American? Sports are a sacred object to many people, said Barbara A. Perry, the Jared L. Beliles Professor and Presidential Studies Director at the University of Virginia's Miller Center. Patriotism is sacred to others. Putting them both in conflict helped to perpetuate the constant stream of Donald Trump. Trump didn't need to be all that convincing. This fire had been burning. He just added gasoline.
Things that are going on. I told myself if I was playing in today's game and we had Nike jersey, I'd tape it up.
David Wells, the outspoken and beer-chugging former pitcher, visited Yankee Stadium last September for Old Timers Day. He is 61 now, his head bald, his goatee various shades of gray. In 1998, after he threw a perfect game, Wells laughed at himself and declared he made history as the only pitcher to do it, quote, half drunk, with bloodshot eyes, monster breath, and a raging, skull-rattling hangover. He was the colorful everyman who towed the line of appropriate behavior. He usually landed on the endearing side. On this day, he was antagonistic. Before he took the field, he placed tape over the Nike swoosh on his pinstripe jersey.
I saw the jersey and I saw the Nike. I'm just like, oh, no.
I hate Nike, he announced to reporters. They're woke. Three factions dominate the current sports landscape: the apolitical, the aggrieved, and the activists. The aggrieved try to convince the apolitical that they're on the same team, that blame for the politicization of sport should be placed entirely on people who care too much about societal change to keep entertainment and escapism as the priorities. Grievance stands as a dreadful foil for activism. Activism often uses civil disobedience as a plea for equality. Grievance stokes fear and anger to protect inequality. Activism constantly challenges convention. Grievance leans into tradition, weaponizing the way things used to be. But grievance is not merely protecting normalcy. It aims to reinforce the athletic power structure. It wants to use sports for more inherently political reasons than do the stars who strive to platform human decency. It is now the dominant strain of political sports conversation. The shift occurred without much acknowledgement. Since the end of 2020, the protests have quieted in sports. We're nearly a half decade into the backlash era. I think 2020 was both the high point and the beginning of the end of the liberal, left-leaning phase, said Douglas Hartman, a University of Minnesota professor who researches sports and social movements. Quote, "It has given way to a backlash phase, one not only against black athletes in protest, but a fairly aggressive, radical, and reactionary right-wing effort to use sport to further their agenda. It's a movement masquerading as an earnest attempt to reclaim sport. I don't think people see how dominant it is. They still think the sports and politics conversation is all about left-leaning protest. I haven't seen much of that lately. But the counter-movement is far more developed than a lot of folks think. And the great contradiction is that it's implicitly more political than anything we saw in the 2010s. End quote. On the Sunday after Trump provoked the NFL in 2017, every team made a statement in some way. The demonstrations were supposed to be a show of strength. But over time, it became clear the league's owners participated because they were interested in temporary pacification. For the remainder of the 2017 season, the NFL warred with itself and defended its public image against a propagandized foe. Soon, the conflict would spread to other sports. Quote, "I think that's where you really started to see that fracture," said former NFL safety Malcolm Jenkins, who helped to form the nonprofit Players Coalition to support social change. "I've always tried to stay focused on the main thing, and the main thing is the people," end quote. Instead, it became an ideological wrestling match about athlete empowerment, a war of celebrity words, often delivered through social media. Trump or his highest profile allies versus LeBron James.
You bum. I can't. He doesn't understand the power that he has.
Versus Greg Popovich.
With his comments about people that should be fired or people that shouldn't be allowed to do this sort of thing. I wonder what the people think about who voted for him.
Versus Steph Curry.
The things that he said and the things that he hasn't said in the right times, that we won't stand for it.
Versus Megan Rapinoe.
What you're saying about Make America Great Again, I think that you're harking back to an era that was not great for everyone. It might have been great for a few people, and maybe America is great for a few people right now, but it's not great for enough Americans.
Versus Roger Goodell.
The National Football League admit we were wrong for not listening to NFL players earlier and encourage all to speak out and peacefully protest.
Versus Bubba Wallace.
Yeah, when I first read it, I was, just like, man, there's so much more things that are going on in the world that I feel like he should be worried about.
You needed a Q rating to fight. The fame brought all this attention and passion, but there was no penetrating discourse. It was a reality show scuffle. No one could win, except for rubbernecking gossip fiends. No societal progress could be made either. Perhaps the stalemate was the point. Quote, "All of these arguments are just distractions," Jenkins said. "People aren't listening," end quote. On the first Sunday of the Trump aftermath, veteran NFL cornerback Josh Norman felt the awkward vibe in the stadium. Cheers were indistinguishable from boos, and the color of fans' clothing did not tell the full story of their loyalty. Allegiances had become entangled, discourse drowned out by noise. It was, Norman said, like something out of a horror film.
"I'm ready to fight for Alabama. As your senator, I'll have President Trump's back."
Grievance helped Senator Tommy Tuberville, the former college football coach who led Auburn to a national title, get into office. In the ad that defined his 2019 campaign, he exhumed dusty criticism of Kaepernick.
The way I was raised, before a football game, you stood to honor America. And after the game, you knelt to honor God. But today, those values are under attack. Socialism, abortion on demand, open borders, it's got to end. So I'm getting off the sidelines and into the fight.
He trolled his way into power, and 5 years later, he tries to troll his way through serving Alabama. When he feels the need, he will use his experiences coaching predominantly black players against the black community, resorting to the worst stereotypes and validating them because he used to coach them up. Many have wondered, how could he? Doesn't it violate some kind of code? Shouldn't he hold his former players in the highest regard? The naivete ignores a most American reality about race. Throughout the nation's history, white men have profited off black labor without conscience. All that work and sweat has never guaranteed increased compassion. It is possible to vilify and benefit at once. Tuberville is doing what he has always done. Many older football coaches have been drawn to Trumpism because of the perception of masculinity and a desperate need to remain in control. The 87-year-old Lou Holtz, who received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Trump in 2020, took to social media earlier this year to declare, quote, "We need to coach America back to greatness." The desire to corral the progressive forces of America, to restore some order, is a significant motivation of grievance. Athletes, particularly minorities and women, are often the target. No one is safe. For the 10 months Brittany Griner spent as a political prisoner in Russia, the effort to free her was a polarizing topic back home. It was as predictable as it was sad. It did not matter that the State Department considered Griner, quote, wrongfully detained. This was an opportunity to put a prominent athlete in her place, even if it meant siding with Russia. The right-wing media labeled her an America hater because she once protested.
She hates the country so much, she doesn't want to hear its anthem.
And a drug addict because she received a preposterous 9-year sentence for getting caught with small amounts of cannabis oil in vape cartridges. It was somehow her fault for going to Russia to earn more money than she can make in the U.S. The agony over another of our own being in a foreign jail competed with the troubling disdain for a gay black woman who stands 6'9". It seemed Vladimir Putin knew America better than it knew itself. When a prisoner swap brought Griner home in December 2022, hostility lingered amid the joy and relief. Quote, "The conversation around her is very reflective of what a lot of black women experience in the world, and especially in our country," said WNBA All-Star Nneka Agumake, the president of the league's player association. So that was something that we live with every day, not just because of BG, but because a lot of us live those realities every day. I really hope that conversation doesn't die because she's come back. End quote. The way Victoria Jackson sees it, sports cannot be separated from politics because of how the games are structured. Modern sport is a political project, said Jackson, the former NCAA champion distance runner, who is now an Arizona State sports historian and clinical assistant professor. It is a project, a global project, of exclusion. Protest and backlash, it turns out, are much older rivals than we realize. Quote, "The first part of the project centered on exclusivity. Who gets to play and who gets to lead," Jackson said. "In America, so many of the origins go back to white males controlling the access. The second part, and it's still going, is inclusivity. People of color and women gaining access on the field and behind the scenes. That's how sport reflects society, and the way it handles its own issues of exclusion and inclusion has a great influence." End quote. The conversation with Jackson persuaded me to think deeper and abandon my ahistorical perspective. For more than a century, American sports have manipulated politics for their benefit. The most prominent leagues didn't become lucrative entertainment giants because they kept the nation's problems and politics from eating away at them. They succeeded precisely because they swallowed politics whole, turning the public craving for diversion into negotiating tactics to receive government subsidies and influence lawmakers to champion their most ambitious, profit-boosting ideas, all under the guise of bringing people together. When pressured to change, the gatekeepers return to where they have always gone in times of need, expecting the politicians and traditionalists to help them maintain their systems while claiming to be apolitical. One group gets mocked and ordered to stick to sports. The other attempts, without apology, to stick it to sports. "We don't see the politics of the privileged," Jackson said. "We only see the politics of those challenging privileged authority." At Bob Jones High School in Madison, Alabama, a few minutes from Huntsville, Coach Kelvis White walks through the weight room and heads toward the football field. The final bell rang about an hour earlier, and a diverse population of students spilled into the parking lot, looking for their cars and school buses, retreating to their extracurricular activities, laughing and dancing and teasing. Their spirit is why White loves his job. Coaching is the family business. His father, Lewis, made the State Hall of Fame after leading Cortland High School to 4 state football titles and 5 track crowns. His older brother, LaRon, recently retired after winning 2 state football championships in a 20-year career. The brothers played for their dad and earned scholarships at Alabama.
"I was carrying coolers and painting fields since I was young,"
White said. He's not lost in time, however. His father had a stern coaching style, but he was also a father figure in the community. Kelvis has taskmaster traits, but he does not try to copy his dad. Coaches must connect differently with this generation. Some coaches ignore this call. White would rather meet the moment.
"I'm not a know-it-all coach. You got to give them a voice and, listen to their thoughts and how they feel about things."
He left Mae Jessamine High School and took the job at Bob Jones in February 2020, just before the pandemic forced the world into isolation. He had to begin building his new program during a dire time. After George Floyd's murder that May, White had to guide his players through a national tragedy that reshaped sentiments about athletes protesting lethal police force. Patriotism could not obstruct the cause anymore. This was no time to antagonize. Trump's voice on the issue weakened. Later, he lost the 2020 election, with athletes using their influence to convince people to vote. But America didn't vote out grievance. The bitterness has lingered, tempering the progressive spirit of a sports world built around striving to improve. It's one more place to confront divisiveness. Quote, "We're in a moment where education has been politicized, where we're not all receiving the same sort of news, where movies and theme parks aren't happy, simple entertainment," said Jackson, the Arizona State professor. Sport becomes a potent, dangerous place for these battles to play. Sport makes them explicit. You can't turn a blind eye in sporting spaces. The ideas held through society always play out most explicitly through the bodies of athletes. End quote. White has tried to build the most responsible space for his team without imposing his political beliefs on the students. They have bonded while talking about life's challenges. His message always comes back to a theme: stay together. When the team discussed whether to protest, he demanded only that they make a group decision and stick with it. They decided against a pregame demonstration. Their nickname is the Patriots, and they lived up to it, not because they obeyed the right-wing rules of behavior, but rather they supported each other.
There's a lot of good in this world and a lot of evil too.
White said.
But we just gotta, love each other, man. And we're all here at 8 o'clock in the morning and to 12 o'clock in 90-degree heat working toward the same goal. It kind of goes back to unity and just us being brothers. So no matter what you see on television, and, don't judge a person.
In a suburb of Huntsville, 11 miles from where the unity fractured, a coach holds on to a relic of a decayed dream. He would be wise to stash it somewhere safe.
The story was written and narrated by Jerry Brewer. It was produced and mixed with original music by Bishop San. I'm Elahe Izadi, and we will be back tomorrow with more stories from the Washington Post.